Ryan Mitchell sat outside the principal's office, his leg bouncing nervously as he stared at the floor. He'd been in this spot so many times over the past 3 years that he practically had his own chair. The secretary didn't even look up anymore when he walked in. She just pointed to the bench and went back to her computer. This time felt different, though. Ryan could sense it in the air. The way the teachers whispered when they walked past. The way Principal Hayes had looked at him that morning when security brought him in. There was something final about it all. He was 16 years old and already felt like the world had given up on him. Maybe he'd given up on himself too. It was hard to tell anymore where his anger ended and where the rest of him began. The office door opened and Principal Hayes stepped out. She was a tall woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her dark hair. She'd been principal at Lincoln High for almost 15 years. Everyone said she was tough but fair. Ryan had tested that fairness more times than he could count. "Come in, Ryan," she said quietly. He shuffled into her office and dropped into the chair across from her desk. The walls were covered with photos of graduating classes and achievement awards. Ryan had never seen himself in any of those pictures. He never would. Principal Hayes sat down and folded her hands on her desk. She looked tired, really tired, like she hadn't slept well in days. "Do you know why you're here?" she asked. Ryan shrugged. "Same reason I'm always here, I guess. The graffiti on the gym wall. That was you, wasn't it?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew it was him. Security cameras had caught him sneaking around the building after hours 2 nights ago. His signature style was all over that wall. Bold letters, sharp edges, angry words. "This is the 3rd time, Ryan. 3rd time you've vandalized school property. Not to mention the fights, the disruptions in class, the disrespect toward your teachers." She paused and rubbed her temples. "I've given you so many chances. We've tried counseling. We've tried detention. We've tried in-school suspension. Nothing seems to get through to you." Ryan felt his chest tighten. He wanted to say something, to explain, but the words caught in his throat. How could he explain that painting those walls was the only time he felt like he had any control? That anger was the only emotion he knew how to express anymore? "Your math teacher, Mr. Patterson, tells me you're brilliant with numbers. Says you can solve problems in your head that most students need calculators for. Your English teacher says you wrote an essay last year that made her cry. You have potential, Ryan, real potential. But you keep throwing it away. So what?" Ryan muttered. "What's the point of being smart if nothing else matters?" "What do you mean?" He looked up at her and for just a second let his guard down. "You know where I live, right? You know my mom works 3 jobs and we still can't pay rent on time? You know my dad left when I was 8 and never looked back? Being good at math doesn't change any of that." Principal Hayes' expression softened. "No, it doesn't change your past. But it could change your future, if you'd let it." "Easy for you to say." "It's not easy for me to say, Ryan. Do you think I enjoy this? Do you think I want to give up on a 16-year-old kid?" Her voice cracked slightly. "But I have 1,200 other students in this building. Students who come to school to learn, teachers who deserve to teach without constant disruptions, and I have to protect them too." Ryan's stomach dropped. He knew what was coming. "I've made a decision and the school board has supported it. Effective immediately, you're expelled from Lincoln High School." The word hung in the air like smoke. Expelled. It felt so permanent, so final. "You can't do that," Ryan said, but his voice came out weak. "I can and I have. You'll need to clean out your locker today. Security will escort you out of the building." He wanted to argue. He wanted to flip the desk or punch the wall or do something to make them see how unfair this was. But instead he just sat there, feeling smaller than he'd ever felt in his life. "What am I supposed to do now?" he asked quietly. Principal Hayes pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "These are resources. GED programs, community centers that offer job training. It's not the end of the world, Ryan, unless you make it the end." He didn't touch the folder. He just stared at it like it was a bomb about to explode. "I hope one day you'll understand why I had to do this," Principal Hayes continued. "I hope you'll look back and realize that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that force us to change. You're throwing away your future, Ryan, and I can't stand by and watch it happen anymore." Ryan stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "You don't know anything about my future." "You're right. I don't. But I know that if you keep going down this path, you won't have one." Security was waiting outside the office. Officer Martinez, the campus security guard who'd caught Ryan more times than either of them could count. He actually looked sad about it. "Come on, kid. Let's get your stuff." They walked through the halls together and Ryan felt every pair of eyes on him. Students whispered. Teachers shook their heads. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked relieved. He was the troublemaker finally getting what he deserved. His locker was covered in stickers and marker drawings. 3 years of his life crammed into a metal box. He threw his textbooks in his backpack along with a few notebooks and some old gym clothes. There wasn't much else worth taking. As he zipped up his bag, he noticed Mr. Patterson, his math teacher, standing at the end of the hallway. The old man walked over slowly, his cane tapping against the floor. Heard what happened, Mr. Patterson said. I'm sorry, Ryan. Don't be. Nobody else is. That's not true. Mr. Patterson reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. This is my personal number. If you ever want to talk or if you need help with anything, you call me. Doesn't matter when. Doesn't matter why. You understand? Ryan took the card but didn't look at it. He just nodded. You're smarter than you think you are, Mr. Patterson said, and you're stronger than you know. Don't forget that. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Time to go, Ryan. They walked to the main entrance together. Ryan had entered this building 3 years ago as a scared 13-year-old kid hoping for a fresh start. He was leaving as an expelled 16-year-old with no plan and no future. As he stepped outside into the afternoon sun, he heard the door lock behind him. That sound seemed louder than it should have been. More final. Ryan walked down the steps and onto the sidewalk. Students were getting out of class, heading to their next period. Life was going on inside those walls like he'd never existed, like he'd never mattered. He pulled out his phone and called his mom. She was probably at work, but he had to tell her. Had to explain why he wouldn't be coming home with homework anymore. Hey, baby. She answered, and he could hear the exhaustion in her voice. Everything okay? Mom, I need to tell you something. What happened? I got expelled. There was a long silence on the other end. Then he heard her take a deep breath. Come home, Ryan, we'll figure this out. But as he started walking toward the bus stop, Ryan wasn't sure there was anything to figure out. He felt like his life was over before it had really begun. The principal had called it throwing away his future. But how could you throw away something you never really had in the first place? He looked back at the school one last time. Lincoln High School, with its brick walls and green lawn and flag flying in the breeze. A place where other kids learned and grew and became something. A place he no longer belonged. Ryan turned away and kept walking, the weight of that folder in his backpack feeling heavier with every step. He didn't know it then, but this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something he couldn't even imagine yet. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what you're really made of. But right now all he felt was lost. Ryan's mom didn't yell when he got home. That was somehow worse than if she had screamed at him. She just looked at him with those tired, disappointed eyes and asked him what he was planning to do now. He didn't have an answer. The first few weeks after the expulsion were strange. He'd wake up at the same time every morning out of habit, then remember he had nowhere to go. His friends from school stopped texting after a while. It was like he disappeared from their world completely. His mom tried to get him enrolled in a GED program, but Ryan kept making excuses. He wasn't ready. He needed time to think. He'd do it next month. The truth was he felt paralyzed, stuck between who he used to be and whoever he was supposed to become. That's when he started hanging out with the wrong crowd. There was a group of guys who hung around the corner store near his apartment building. They were older, in their 20s, and they always seemed to have money in their pockets. They didn't ask questions about why a 16-year-old kid wasn't in school. They just welcomed him in like he was one of them. The leader of the group was a guy named Torres. He was 24 and acted like he owned the whole neighborhood. He took a liking to Ryan right away, said the kid reminded him of himself at that age. School's a waste anyway, Torres told him one night while they sat on the hood of someone's car. They teach you a bunch of stuff you'll never use. Out here, you learn what really matters. You learn how to survive. Ryan wanted to believe him. It was easier than admitting he'd made a huge mistake. Easier than facing the fact that he'd thrown away his chance at something better. At first, it was small stuff. Torres would send Ryan to deliver packages across the neighborhood. He never asked what was in them, and Torres never told him. Ryan got paid in cash, and for the first time in his life, he had money in his pocket. Real money. He gave some to his mom, told her he got a job at a warehouse. She was so exhausted from her own work that she didn't ask too many questions. She was just relieved he was doing something productive. But Ryan knew better. He knew exactly what kind of job he had. He just didn't want to think about it too hard. Months went by like this. Ryan fell into a routine of sleeping late, hanging out with Torres and the crew, making his deliveries, and coming home after his mom was already asleep. He stopped looking at the business card Mr. Patterson had given him. Stopped thinking about school or GED programs or any kind of future beyond next week. His 17th birthday came and went without much fanfare. His mom made him his favorite dinner, but he barely touched it. She asked him if everything was okay, and he lied and said yes. The thing about hanging with guys like Torres is that the jobs always escalate. It's never just deliveries forever. Eventually, they want to see if you're really committed. If you're really one of them. One night, Torres asked Ryan to help him with something bigger. There was a rival crew moving in on their territory, and they needed to send a message. Torres was vague about the details, but Ryan understood what he was asking. "I don't know, man," Ryan said, feeling his stomach turn. "That's not really my thing." Torres looked at him hard. "What's not your thing? Being loyal? Having your brothers back? Because that's what we are, Ryan. We're brothers, and brothers protect each other." Ryan agreed because he didn't know how to say no, because walking away meant admitting he'd wasted the last year of his life with the wrong people. Because he was scared and stupid and 17 years old. The night it happened, Ryan felt like he was moving through a nightmare. Everything seemed too bright and too loud. His hands were shaking and his heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Torres and another guy named Eddie were in front. Ryan was supposed to be the lookout. That's all. Just watch and signal if anyone was coming. But things went wrong fast. The rival crew was ready for them. Someone had tipped them off. There was shouting. And then there were sounds that Ryan would never forget. Sounds that would wake him up in cold sweats for years to come. Eddie got shot. He went down right in front of Ryan, clutching his chest. Blood spreading across his shirt like spilled ink. Ryan dropped to his knees beside him. Eddie was only 19. He had a girlfriend and a baby daughter he was always showing pictures of. Now he was bleeding out on the concrete while sirens wailed in the distance. "Get out of here," Torres yelled at Ryan. "Go, now." But Ryan couldn't move. He held Eddie's hand while the life drained out of him. Watched his eyes go empty and still. The kid who'd joked around with him just hours ago was gone, and nothing would ever bring him back. Torres dragged Ryan away before the police arrived. They ran through alleys and backyards until they couldn't run anymore. When they finally stopped, Ryan threw up in someone's trash can while Torres kept watch. "You can't tell anyone," Torres said. "You understand me? Not your mom. Not anyone. We were never there." Ryan nodded, but he wasn't really listening. All he could see was Eddie's face. All he could feel was the weight of that moment when everything went wrong. The funeral was 3 days later. Ryan went even though Torres told him not to. He stood in the back of the church and watched Eddie's girlfriend cry while holding their baby. The little girl didn't understand why everyone was so sad. She just kept reaching for her daddy, asking when he was coming home. That's when something broke inside Ryan. Or maybe something finally came back together. He realized he was on a path that only led to one place. He'd end up like Eddie or in prison or both. And his mom would be the one crying at his funeral, wondering where she went wrong. That night, Ryan went home and really looked at his mom for the first time in months. She'd gotten thinner, more tired. The gray in her hair had spread. She was killing herself to keep them afloat, and he was out there throwing his life away with gangsters and criminals. He broke down, just completely fell apart in their tiny kitchen while his mom held him and asked what was wrong. "I messed up, Mom," he sobbed. "I messed up so bad. Eddie's dead and I was there and I can't keep doing this." She didn't ask for details. She just held him and let him cry until he had nothing left. "Tell me what you need," she finally said. "Tell me how to help you." Ryan pulled out his wallet and found Mr. Patterson's business card, crumpled and faded but still readable. He'd carried it with him every day for a year without really knowing why. "I need to call this number," he said. Mr. Patterson answered on the third ring. It was almost midnight, but he didn't sound angry about being woken up. He just listened while Ryan explained everything. The expulsion, the wasted year, Eddie's death, the fear that it was too late to turn things around. "It's never too late," Mr. Patterson said firmly. "But you have to mean it, Ryan. You have to really want to change. Because it's going to be hard, harder than anything you've done before." "I know." Ryan said. "I'm ready." They met at a diner the next morning. Mr. Patterson brought information about GED programs and community colleges. He had connections with people who could help, he said. But Ryan had to do the work. No one could do it for him. "Why are you helping me?" Ryan asked. "After everything I did. After I threw away all those chances." Mr. Patterson smiled sadly. "Because I was you once. Long time ago, but I was you. Someone gave me a second chance, and I've spent my whole life trying to pay that forward. Now it's your turn to take that chance and run with it." Ryan cut all ties with Torres and the crew. It wasn't easy. Torres called him a traitor, threatened him. But Ryan stood firm. He'd seen where that road ended, and he wasn't going down it anymore. He enrolled in a GED program at the community center, went to class every evening after working day shifts at a grocery store. The other students were all ages, all backgrounds. Some were older adults who never finished high school. Some were kids like him who'd messed up and were trying to fix it. His teacher was a woman named Mrs. Rivera. She was patient and kind, but she didn't accept excuses. If you didn't do the work, she called you out on it. If you did do the work, she praised you like you'd just won the lottery. Ryan studied like his life depended on it. Because it did. He stayed up until 2 in the morning working through practice problems. He carried flashcards in his pocket and studied during his breaks at work. When he got stuck on something, he called Mr. Patterson, who always answered and always helped him work through it. His mom noticed the change. She started smiling again, started sleeping a little better. She'd find him at the kitchen table at midnight surrounded by books and papers, and she'd bring him tea and just sit with him quietly. "I'm proud of you, baby," she said one night. "I know this is hard, but I'm so proud." Ryan took his GED test 6 months later. He was so nervous he almost threw up in the parking lot before going in. But once he sat down and looked at those questions, something clicked. All those late nights studying, all those practice tests, it had all been worth it. He passed with flying colors, scored in the top 10%. When he got his results, he called Mr. Patterson first, then his mom. "I told you," Mr. Patterson said, and Ryan could hear the smile in his voice. "I told you that you could do it." Standing there with his GED certificate in his hands, Ryan thought about Eddie, about Torres and the crew, about the year he'd wasted and the years he'd almost thrown away. He thought about Principal Hayes telling him he was throwing away his future. She'd been right. But what she didn't know was that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start climbing back up. Sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what really matters. Ryan had lost a lot, but he'd found something too. He'd found himself. And that was just the beginning. Getting his GED was just the first step. Ryan knew that, but it felt like climbing a mountain, and he'd only reached the first marker. The summit was still miles away, hidden in clouds he couldn't see through yet. Mr. Patterson helped him apply to the local community college. Ryan had never thought about college before. In his neighborhood, most people didn't. You graduated high school if you were lucky, then you got whatever job you could find. College was for other people. People who had money and parents with degrees and futures that looked bright from the start. But Mr. Patterson insisted. "You've got the grades now. You've got the drive. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong there. Not even yourself." The application process was overwhelming. Ryan had to write essays about his goals and his experiences. He had to get transcripts and letters of recommendation. He had to fill out financial aid forms that seemed designed to confuse people on purpose. His mom helped as much as she could, but she'd never been to college either. They figured it out together, late at night at their kitchen table with Mr. Patterson on speakerphone walking them through the complicated parts. When the acceptance letter came, Ryan stared at it for 10 minutes straight. He'd been accepted to Metro Community College with a partial scholarship. He'd need to work to cover the rest, but it was doable. It was actually happening. His mom cried happy tears for the first time in years. Classes started in the fall. Ryan was 18 now, older than most of the freshman students, but younger than some of the adults who were going back to school. He felt caught between worlds, not quite fitting in anywhere. The first day was terrifying. The campus was huge compared to Lincoln High School. There were buildings everywhere, students rushing around like they knew exactly where they were going. Ryan got lost 3 times trying to find his first class. When he finally walked into Introduction to Computer Science, he was 15 minutes late. The professor, Dr. Kim, looked up from her lecture but didn't say anything. She just nodded at an empty seat in the back. Ryan had chosen computer science almost by accident. When he was filling out his application, he had to pick a major. He thought about the phone in his pocket, the apps he used every day, the way technology seemed to run everything. It seemed like something that might lead to a real job. He had no idea if he'd be any good at it. That first semester was brutal. Ryan was working full-time at the grocery store, taking 4 classes, and trying to keep up with students who'd had advantages he couldn't even imagine. Some of them had laptops that cost more than his mom's monthly rent. Some of them had been coding since they were 12. Some of them talked about college like it was just a natural next step, not a mountain they had to climb. Ryan studied in every spare moment, between customers at work, on the bus, at 2 in the morning when he couldn't sleep because he was worried about failing. He lived on coffee and instant ramen and determination. Dr. Kim's class was the hardest. She moved fast, assumed everyone knew the basics, and gave assignments that made Ryan's head spin. But something about it clicked with him. The logic of it. The way you could build something from nothing. Just lines of code that became actual programs that did actual things. He stayed after class one day to ask Dr. Kim a question about an assignment. She answered it, then looked at him carefully. "You're working harder than anyone else in that class," she said. "I can tell. You've got potential, Ryan, but you need to believe that too." Those words kept him going through midterms, through papers and projects and exams that felt impossible. He failed his first programming test and almost quit right there. Sat in his car in the parking lot and seriously considered never coming back. Then he thought about Eddie, about Torres, about the life he'd almost had, about his mom working 3 jobs so he could have this chance. He went back inside and asked Dr. Kim if he could retake the test. She said no, but she offered him extra credit assignments. He did every single one, stayed up all night for 3 nights straight, and brought his grade back up to passing. By the end of his first semester, Ryan had made the dean's list. He couldn't believe it when he saw his name on that list. Had to check 3 times to make sure it wasn't a mistake. Mr. Patterson took him out for dinner to celebrate. "See, I told you. You've got what it takes." "I almost quit like 5 times, Ryan admitted, "but you didn't. That's what matters." The next semester, Ryan took more computer science classes and discovered something he was really good at. He could see patterns in code that other students missed. He could debug programs that everyone else said were broken beyond fixing. His professors started noticing him, started calling on him to help explain concepts to the class. It felt strange being the smart kid, being the one with answers instead of the one causing problems. Sometimes Ryan still felt like the troublemaker from Lincoln High School, waiting to mess everything up. But slowly he started believing that maybe he'd changed. Maybe he really was different now. In his second year, Dr. Kim approached him with an opportunity. She was working on a research project about educational software, and she needed student assistance. It paid a little bit, and it would look great on his resume. Ryan jumped at the chance. The project was developing an app to help high school students learn math. Dr. Kim's team was full of graduate students who knew way more than Ryan did. But he had something they didn't have. He knew what it was like to struggle. He knew what it was like to feel like school wasn't for you. "These programs always assume students want to learn," Ryan said during one of their meetings. "But what about the kids who think they're too dumb for math? The kids who've already given up? How do we reach them?" Dr. Kim looked at him thoughtfully. "What would have reached you? When you were that kid?" Ryan thought about it. Something that didn't feel like school. Something that felt like a game, maybe. Or something that showed me how math actually mattered in real life. Not just equations on a board, but like actual reasons to care. They ended up redesigning big parts of the app based on Ryan's input. Made it more interactive, more visual, more connected to real-world problems. When they tested it with actual high school students, it worked better than any of their previous versions. Ryan felt something shift inside him. He wasn't just learning anymore. He was creating. He was solving problems. He was doing something that actually mattered. In his third year, Ryan transferred to a state university on a full scholarship. It was 3 hours away from home, which meant leaving his mom for the first time in his life. She was proud but worried. Ryan was worried too. The university was even bigger and more intimidating than community college. Students here came from all over the country. Some came from other countries. They'd been to private schools and had tutors and seemed to speak a different language Ryan was still learning. But he'd learned how to work hard, how to ask for help when he needed it, how to keep going even when things felt impossible. He declared his major in computer science and started taking advanced classes. His professors challenged him in ways he'd never been challenged before. They pushed him to think bigger, to see possibilities he'd never considered. One of his professors, Dr. Anderson, mentioned a national competition for educational technology innovations. Teams of students could submit proposals for new apps or programs, and the winner got funding and mentorship from tech companies. Ryan thought about the app he'd worked on with Dr. Kim, thought about all the kids like him who were falling through the cracks, kids who were smart but angry, kids who had potential but no path forward. He started working on a proposal, an app that would connect at-risk students with tutors, resources, and opportunities, but not in a boring institutional way, in a way that felt personal, that felt like someone actually cared about them. He worked on it for months, coded during every free moment, tested it with students from his old neighborhood, asked for feedback from teachers and counselors. Mr. Patterson helped him refine the educational aspects. His mom helped him understand what parents would need to see. When he submitted his proposal, he tried not to get his hopes up. There were probably hundreds of submissions from students at prestigious universities with better resources and more experience. But 3 months later, he got an email. His project had made it to the finals. He was invited to present at a national competition in California. Ryan had never been on a plane before, had never been out of his home state. Now he was flying to California to present his work to judges from major tech companies. The presentation was in front of 200 people. Ryan's hands were shaking as he walked on stage. He thought about all the times he'd stood in front of Principal Hayes' office getting in trouble. Thought about Eddie's funeral. Thought about every moment that had led him here. Then he started talking about his app, about the kids it was designed to help, about his own story and why he understood what they needed. When he finished, the audience applauded. The judges asked questions and Ryan answered every single one. He knew his app inside and out. He knew the research behind it. He knew the kids it would help because he'd been one of them. 2 weeks later, he got the call. He'd won first place, $50,000 in funding and a mentorship program with a Silicon Valley tech company. Ryan called his mom first, then Mr. Patterson, then Dr. Kim. They all cried. Even Ryan cried, and he hadn't cried since the night Eddie died. "You did it," his mom said. "Baby, you actually did it," but Ryan knew he wasn't done. This wasn't the finish line. It was just another marker on the mountain he was climbing. He was halfway up now, maybe more. And the view from here was starting to look pretty incredible. He thought about that folder Principal Hayes had given him 4 years ago, the one with resources for GED programs and job training, the one he'd almost thrown away. He'd been so angry that day, so sure his life was over, he'd been wrong. His life hadn't ended that day. It had just begun in a way he couldn't have imagined. Sometimes the worst moments become the catalyst for the best changes. Sometimes you need to lose everything to discover what you're truly capable of becoming. Ryan was discovering that now, and he was just getting started. Ryan graduated from university with honors and multiple job offers from tech companies. He chose a smaller startup that was focused on educational technology. The pay was decent, but more importantly, the mission matched what he cared about. They were building tools to help underserved communities access quality education. But Ryan had bigger dreams. The app he'd created for the competition kept growing in his mind. He'd continued developing it through his senior year, testing it with schools in low-income neighborhoods. The feedback was incredible. Teachers loved it. Students actually used it. Parents said it was making a real difference. He started thinking about turning it into a real company. It was a crazy idea. He was 22 years old with student loans and barely any savings. He didn't have business experience or connections in Silicon Valley. He didn't come from money. Everything about his background said this was impossible. But he'd thought getting his GED was impossible too. He'd thought community college was impossible. He'd thought winning that national competition was impossible. Maybe impossible was just another word for something that hadn't happened yet. He talked to Dr. Kim about it. She introduced him to some people who knew about startups and venture capital. They looked at his app, looked at his data, and told him he might actually have something. Ryan worked on his business plan for 6 months while keeping his day job. He lived on 4 hours of sleep, fueled by coffee and the kind of determination that comes from knowing exactly how far you've come and how far you still want to go. He pitched his idea to investors. Got rejected by the first 15. The 16th said yes. A small investment, but enough to get started. Enough to quit his job and go all in. His mom was terrified. What if it doesn't work? What if you lose everything? Then I'll start over, Ryan said. Again, like I always do. He named his company Path Forward. The logo was a simple upward arrow. The mission was clear. Create technology that helps at-risk youth find their path to success. The first year was chaos. Ryan hired a small team, mostly people he'd gone to college with who believed in the mission as much as he did. They worked out of a tiny office that was really just a converted warehouse space. They ate cheap takeout and worked ridiculous hours and celebrated every small victory. The app launched officially when Ryan was 23. Within 6 months, it was being used in 200 schools across 5 states. Within a year, that number tripled. The media started paying attention. Local news did a story about the kid from the rough neighborhood who built an education empire. Then national outlets picked it up. Forbes did a feature on young entrepreneurs changing education. They put Ryan's photo in the magazine. He kept that magazine on his desk, not because he was proud of being in it, but because he couldn't quite believe it was real. Sometimes he'd look at that photo and think about 16-year-old Ryan getting expelled from school. Would that kid have believed this was possible? Not in a million years. By the time Ryan turned 26, Path Forward had helped over 100,000 students. The company had grown to 50 employees. They'd raised serious funding from major venture capital firms. Ryan was being invited to speak at conferences and schools all over the country. He made sure his mom retired from all her jobs. Bought her a nice house in a good neighborhood. She cried when he gave her the keys. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "Yes, I did. You worked 3 jobs to give me a chance. Now it's my turn to take care of you." He also started a scholarship fund. Every year, Path Forward would give full-ride scholarships to 10 students who'd overcome serious challenges. Students who'd been expelled or dropped out or made mistakes. Students who reminded him of himself. Mr. Patterson was on the selection committee. He was retired now, but he still loved helping kids. He and Ryan had stayed close over the years, had dinner once a month just to catch up. "You know what's funny?" Mr. Patterson said during one of those dinners. "Principal Hayes asks about you sometimes. I see her at education conferences. She always wants to know how you're doing." Ryan felt a strange tightness in his chest at the mention of her name. He hadn't thought about Principal Hayes in years. Hadn't let himself think about that day in her office when everything fell apart. "What do you tell her?" Ryan asked. "I tell her the truth. That you've done extraordinarily well. That you've turned your life into something remarkable." Ryan nodded but didn't say anything. He still didn't know how he felt about Principal Hayes. Part of him understood why she'd expelled him. He'd been out of control, disruptive, destructive. She'd had no choice. But another part of him still remembered how it felt to be rejected like that, to be told he was throwing his life away, to walk out of those school doors feeling like the world had given up on him. A few months later, Ryan was in his office reviewing proposals for the next round of scholarships when his assistant knocked on his door. "You got something in the mail," she said, handing him a formal-looking envelope. "Looks important." The return address said Lincoln High School. Ryan's heart started beating faster as he opened it. It was an invitation. Lincoln High was celebrating its 50th anniversary with a special ceremony. They wanted to honor notable alumni who'd achieved success and were making a difference in their communities. They wanted Ryan to be the chief guest and keynote speaker. The letter was signed by the school board president and, at the bottom in neat handwriting, Principal Eleanor Hayes. Ryan read the letter 3 times. His hands were shaking slightly, though he couldn't explain why. This was ridiculous. He'd spoken at major tech conferences. He'd been interviewed on national television. He ran a company worth millions of dollars, but the thought of going back to Lincoln High School made him feel like that 16-year-old kid again. Angry and scared and lost, he almost said no. Started drafting a polite decline, said he was too busy, had too many commitments, but the words felt hollow even as he typed them. His mom noticed he was distracted when he visited her that weekend. She asked what was wrong. "Lincoln High invited me to speak at their anniversary ceremony," he said. "That's wonderful. You should do it." "I don't know if I can, Mom, going back there," Seeing Principal Hayes, it's complicated. His mom looked at him with that expression she had, the one that said she could see right through him. Baby, you've spent the last 10 years proving that woman wrong. Don't you think it's time to show her what you've become? Not for her, for you. For that 16-year-old boy who left that school thinking his life was over. She was right. Of course she was right. Ryan called the school the next day and accepted the invitation. The weeks leading up to the ceremony were strange. Ryan found himself thinking about Lincoln High more than he had in years. Remembering specific teachers and classrooms. Remembering the good moments mixed in with all the bad ones. He remembered Mr. Patterson's math class, where he'd first discovered he was good at something. Remembered writing that essay his English teacher had cried over. Remembered lunch in the cafeteria with friends whose names he could barely recall now. He'd been so angry back then. At his dad for leaving. At his mom for working all the time. At the world for being unfair. At himself for not knowing how to be anything other than angry. The anger was gone now. Or maybe not gone, but transformed into something else. Drive, purpose, determination. He worked on his speech for the ceremony, wrote draft after draft. Nothing felt right. How could he sum up everything that had happened in the last 10 years? How could he explain the journey from that angry kid to the man he'd become? Mr. Patterson helped him work through it. Don't try to tell them everything, he advised. Just tell them the truth. The messy, complicated truth. That's what those kids need to hear. The night before the ceremony, Ryan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what he was going to say. Thinking about seeing Principal Hayes again after all these years. He wondered if she remembered him. Probably not. She'd expelled dozens of students over her career, maybe hundreds. He was probably just another troubled kid in a long line of troubled kids. But she'd remembered him enough to sign that invitation. To specifically invite him back, Ryan got out of bed and went to his home office. He pulled out an old box he kept in his closet. Inside was his GED certificate, his community college transcripts, his university diploma, the magazine with his photo, and at the bottom, folded and worn, was that folder Principal Hayes had given him the day he was expelled. He'd kept it all these years without really knowing why. Maybe because he needed to remember where he came from. Maybe because he needed proof that the journey was real. He opened the folder and looked at the resources inside. GED programs, job training centers, community support services. At the time, it had felt like such a small offering. Like she was giving up on him with a handful of pamphlets, but now he understood. She'd been giving him a map. Not to where he was supposed to go, but to where he could start. The rest had been up to him. Ryan finally finished his speech at 3 a.m. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. That would have to be enough. As the sun came up, he got ready for the drive to Lincoln High School. Put on his best suit, looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Successful entrepreneur, public speaker, someone who mattered. But underneath all of that, he could still see traces of that angry 16-year-old. Still there, still part of him, just transformed into something better. His phone buzzed. A text from his mom. Proud of you, baby. Go show them what you're made of. Ryan smiled and headed out the door. He was going back to the place where his life fell apart. Back to face the woman who'd expelled him. Back to the halls where he'd been the troublemaker. The problem. The kid everyone had given up on. But he wasn't going back as that kid. He was going back as proof that people can change. That second chances matter. That giving up on someone might be the push they need to find themselves. He was going back to say thank you. The parking lot at Lincoln High School looked exactly the same. Ryan sat in his car for 5 minutes, just staring at the building. His heart was pounding harder than it had before any business presentation he'd ever given. The brick walls. The green lawn. The flag waving in the breeze. Everything was familiar yet felt completely different. Or maybe he was different. And that changed how he saw everything else. He checked his watch. Still 30 minutes before the ceremony started. He'd arrived early on purpose, wanted some time to walk around before facing everyone. As he stepped out of his car, a security guard approached. Not Officer Martinez, who'd escorted him out a decade ago. This was a younger guy, probably fresh out of college. Can I help you, sir? The guard asked her. That was new. I'm speaking at the ceremony today. Just wanted to look around a bit first. The guard nodded and let him through. Ryan walked across the parking lot where he used to skip class and smoke with friends who'd long since disappeared from his life. The spot where Torres used to pick him up was now a bike rack filled with expensive mountain bikes. The main entrance had been renovated. New doors, new paint. But once he stepped inside, the smell hit him immediately. That specific combination of floor cleaner and teenage chaos that every high school in America seemed to share. His footsteps echoed in the hallway. Classes were in session, so the corridors were empty. Ryan walked slowly, taking it all in. There was the water fountain where he'd gotten into his first fight at Lincoln. There was the bathroom where he used to hide during second period. There was the hallway where Officer Martinez had caught him tagging the walls. He stopped in front of a classroom door. Room 203, Mr. Patterson's old room. Ryan peered through the small window. A different teacher now, younger woman, explaining something on the smartboard, but the layout was the same. The desks arranged the same way. He could almost see his 16-year-old self slouched in the back row, pretending not to care while secretly loving the logic of mathematics. It's strange, isn't it? Coming back, Ryan turned around. Principal Hayes stood behind him. She was older now, more gray in her hair, deeper lines around her eyes, but she still had that same steady gaze, that same presence that made you stand up a little straighter. Principal Hayes, Ryan said, and his voice came out steadier than he expected. Ryan Mitchell, I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I wasn't sure either, he admitted. They stood there in awkward silence for a moment, 10 years of unspoken words hanging between them. Would you walk with me? She asked. They walked side by side through the empty hallways. Principal Hayes pointed out changes made since he'd been a student. New computer lab, renovated gym, updated cafeteria. Ryan nodded along but wasn't really hearing the details. She led him to her office. The same office where he'd sat so many times, where his life had changed direction on that last day. Coffee? She offered. Sure. She poured 2 cups from the machine in the corner and handed him one. They sat down, her behind the desk, him in that same chair across from her. The déjà vu was overwhelming. I've followed your career, Principal Hayes said. Mr. Patterson keeps me updated. I'm extraordinarily proud of what you've accomplished, Ryan. The words hit him harder than he expected. He had to look away for a second. I spent a long time angry at you, Ryan said quietly, for expelling me, for giving up on me. I know, and I've spent a long time questioning that decision, wondering if there was another way, if I'd failed you somehow. Ryan looked up at her in surprise. He'd never considered that she might have doubted herself, that she might have lost sleep over expelling an angry 16-year-old kid. Did you fail me? He asked. Principal Hayes was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I made the decision I thought was right for the school, for the other students. But every time I make a similar decision now, I think about you, about what happened next, about whether tough love is actually love or just giving up. You didn't give up on me, Ryan said, surprising himself with the words. You gave me a folder full of resources. You gave me a path forward, even if I was too angry to see it at the time. And more than that, you made me hit rock bottom. Sometimes people need to fall apart completely before they can put themselves back together the right way. That's very generous of you. I'm not being generous. I'm being honest. If you hadn't expelled me, I probably would have graduated high school and gone nowhere. Maybe gotten a low-wage job. Maybe ended up in prison. But getting kicked out forced me to confront who I was and who I wanted to be. It was the worst day of my life, but it led to all the best days that came after. Principal Hayes' eyes were glistening. I hope that might be true. But you never really know, do you? You make these impossible decisions and just hope they lead somewhere good. They did, but I need you to know something. The path from that day to this one wasn't straight. I fell way further after you expelled me. I ran with gangs. I watched someone die. I almost died myself in a different way. It took a lot of people refusing to give up on me before I could get here. Mr. Patterson especially. He's a good man. The best, but so are you. You made an impossible choice, and you made it for the right reasons. I just wish 16-year-old me could have understood that. They talked for another 20 minutes. About the school, about Ryan's company, about the students currently struggling the way he once did. Principal Hayes asked thoughtful questions about Path Forward and the work they were doing. Ryan found himself relaxing, seeing her not as the authority figure who'd punished him, but as an educator who genuinely cared. The ceremony starts soon. Principal Hayes finally said.
Ready to face a gym full of people?
Not even a little bit, Ryan admitted. But I'll do it anyway. They walked to the gymnasium together. The place was packed. Current students filled the bleachers. Faculty and staff lined the sides. Parents and community members filled the folding chairs on the gym floor. A stage had been set up with a podium and microphone. Ryan spotted his mom in the front row beaming at him. Mr. Patterson sat next to her. His entire team from Path Forward had driven down to support him. Even some of his college professors were there. The ceremony opened with the usual speeches. The school board president talked about 50 years of excellence. The student council president talked about tradition and pride. A few alumni spoke about their fond memories. Then it was Ryan's turn. As he walked to the podium, his legs felt weak. He could see faces in the crowd. Some curious, some bored, some paying attention. In the middle section, he spotted a group of kids who looked just like he used to look. Arms crossed, slouched in their seats, clearly not wanting to be there. Those were his people. Ryan adjusted the microphone and looked out at the crowd. For a second, his mind went completely blank. Then he saw Mr. Patterson give him an encouraging nod. 10 years ago, Ryan began, I walked out of this school for the last time. I didn't walk out with a diploma or good memories or hope for the future. I walked out expelled, angry, and convinced my life was over. I was 16 years old and I genuinely believed I had no future worth living. The gymnasium had gone completely quiet. Even the bored kids in the middle were paying attention now. Principal Hayes made the decision to expel me, and at the time, I hated her for it. I thought she was giving up on me. I thought she was just another adult who didn't care. But I was wrong about that. What she actually did was refuse to let me waste away in a system I was actively destroying. She forced me to confront myself in a way I'd never had to before. Ryan told them his story. Not the sanitized version, but the real one. The gang involvement. The friend who died. The moment he decided to change. The long, painful climb back up. The community college classes. The late nights studying. The competition he won. The company he built. He was honest about the failures and the fear. About the times he almost quit. About still feeling sometimes like that angry 16-year-old kid pretending to be a successful adult. I'm not standing here to tell you that getting expelled was good for me, Ryan said. I'm not saying that harsh punishment fixes troubled kids. What I'm saying is that my story isn't about punishment or redemption. It's about choices. Every single day we make choices about who we want to be, and every single day we get the chance to make different choices than we made yesterday. He looked directly at those kids in the middle section, the ones who reminded him of himself. Some of you are sitting there right now thinking you don't belong here, thinking school isn't for you, thinking you're not smart enough or good enough or whatever enough. I know because I thought the exact same things. But here's what I learned. Your current situation is not your final destination. The angry, messed up kid I was at 16 is not who I had to be forever. And whoever you are today is not who you have to be tomorrow.